Are you confused about all the different information that's out there about relationships? Well, I'm going to explain to you the 5 key components and how to build a relationship that's going to last. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure that you hit that button below and turn on the bell for notifications, because I make videos every Sunday on how to break dysfunctional patterns in yourself so that you can improve all of your relationships. Okay, the first one that we're going to talk about is emotional safety. Now, you've probably seen other of my videos or seen me on social media talk about emotional safety a lot. I talk about emotional safety a lot because of this chart right here. This is Abraham Maslow's chart. Abraham Maslow was a psychologist, and he discovered that humans have essential basic needs in order for us to function in a healthy way. Most of us have the bottom need already met, physiological needs, but the primary ones that we have to really focus on is the second one, emotional safety and security. When we kind of think about safety in a relationship, we have to understand that a relationship that is emotionally safe is one that is free from fear and pain. So, when you think about emotionally safe relationships, we're going to identify those as feeling loved, content, connected, satisfied, fulfilled, protected, accepted, praised, worthwhile, nurtured, guided, understood, validated, self-confident, competent, appropriately autonomous, and self-reliant, strong, adaptable, and included, optimistic, and spontaneous. That's a lot. The reason I went into all of that is because emotional safety is absolutely essential in order for us to really grow into the healthy adults that we want to become. So if we are raised in environments where we're not particularly emotionally safe, then we adapt to emotionally survive those circumstances. So when we adapt to survive, that means that we take on these dysfunctional habits from our survival instinct: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And we come up with all of these different insecure attachments and avoidant attachment styles. We really struggle in our life because we don't have emotional safety and we don't really know how to be emotionally safe. So out of safety in Maslow's hierarchy comes the higher needs. Love and belonging, obviously, what we're talking about. Acceptance, that's friendships, romantic attachments, family relationships, social groups, community, all the things that we really want in life that makes life very fulfilling. And then higher than that is our self-esteem needs. These are our needs for appreciation and respect and personal growth. We need to feel valued by other people and feel like we're making a contribution to the world. And then finally, at the very tippy top, self-actualization. This is where we really, understand our own personal growth and we're really working to fulfill our potential. Now, unfortunately, so many people and so many relationships never get up to those levels because they can't get out of the basement of Maslow's hierarchy. They dwell down in safety, where they feel like their relationships are unsafe. So they feel love, and they feel like they're connected, but that connection and that love is very tenuous and it's not stable or secure. So that's why I include emotional safety as my number one pick. Number two, knowing your schema patterns. Now, what's a schema? This is so important because schemas are very foundational to our development. And when we understand what our schema patterns are, then we really do grow and transform ourselves. So schemas are pervasive patterns of dysfunctional beliefs that come from our experiences in childhood, and they are self-defeating and sabotaging throughout our entire lives. So you've probably seen other videos of mine talk about schemas or talk about self-sabotage. And the reason I talk about this often is because all of these are schemas. They are beliefs that screw us up in our life and in our relationships, and they come directly from these early childhood experiences. The reason that these are number 2 on my list and why they're so important is because they are unconscious patterns that get elaborated and grow over time. So they don't get better over time. They tend to get worse over time. So if you don't really understand what your schemas are, then you really don't understand what your own red flags are. And that is essential to your own personal growth. You need to be able to understand what kind of issues you have that contribute to the dysfunction in the relationship. There's so many videos out there that talk about what red flags to watch out for in other people. What about your own? You're another person to another person, right? So you have to know what your own red flags are. And if you don't know what your own red flags are, you're only kind of operating from this victim mindset. So watch out for them because they're going to get you, right? Rather than understanding what my red flags are so I can take responsibility for them so I don't harm another person. Again, back to number one, emotional safety really does begin with you. So recognizing that these schemas operate in your belief system and you barely notice them. So when they come out as your insecurities. They come out in these inappropriate ways because we're using one of our 4 survival instincts, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, as a way to cope with these dysfunctional beliefs. So let me give you an example. Somebody who has, like, say, an abandonment schema. So they've been traumatized or they've been through very difficult experiences in their childhood where, dad was in and out of their lives. And so they form a belief that says something along the lines of, I can't depend on anybody staying with me long term, or that if I love somebody, they're eventually going to leave me for somebody better. So if they have an abandonment schema, this person is going to have a pretty intense reaction or have a pretty intense insecurity around being in love because they never quite feel safe, because that schema is telling them to always be on guard, that the people who love you the most are going to leave you and abandon you. So if you don't really know that you have that schema, if you don't really know you have that pattern, you're just doomed to repeat it. And if you are dating somebody or you're in love with somebody and you have this abandonment schema, think about the effects that that's going to have on somebody else. If you feel like you are going to be abandoned at any point, you're going to look insecure, you're going to get jealous of the people that he or she hangs out with, you're going to make up stories in your mind about how you're not enough, how you'll be abandoned, how they're probably out looking for somebody new, or maybe you even date or you're married to somebody who kind of fulfills that pattern. And that is how we create this self-fulfilling prophecy. So you may be in love with somebody or dating somebody who actually does do those things. They're betraying you. They look outside the relationship constantly. And then they, treat you poorly. So that's 2 sides of the same coin. It's understanding your own pattern, but then also understanding that the people around you may reflect that pattern in some way. So years of therapy have taught me that if you do not know what your schema patterns are, you're going to continually sabotage your relationship with this reactivity that you have. And reactivity, again, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Fight is that over dominance, aggressive, kind of domineering, intimidating way of operating. Flight is shutting down, avoiding, suppressing. And then freeze and fawn is to cower and cater and to try to please everybody around you. So we can't think of reactivity as just one thing where people blow up. We also have to think of it as shutting down. We also have to think of it as people pleasing. So learning about your schema patterns allows you to take responsibility for these beliefs and then build the skills to help you correct them and to heal. So doing that results in you building what's called the healthy adult. The healthy adult is a balanced, more mature, and realistic part of yourself that allows you to regulate your emotions, make thoughtful decisions, navigate life's challenges, and be far more resilient. So the key to all of this is understanding that the healthy adult, and it must be learned. It's not something that you were born with. So people who are in relationships with who are raised by healthy adults are taught emotional regulation. They are taught critical thinking. They are taught to look outside of themselves and have perspective with empathy. They're taught these things throughout their childhood. But if you're raised with dysregulated adults, people who have mental and emotional health issues, then you are not taught these things. And so the only thing that you really have to go off of are your survival instinct, kind of, what you learned in childhood I learned to fight. I learned to stay away. I learned to freeze up. I learned to cower and cater, people please. So when we're doing that in our adult lives, though, all of those ways of operating are dysfunctional. They don't work well. It's because healthy adults want to be coupled with and paired up with other healthy adults. So if you're a person who has a lot of dysfunction in your childhood, then you need to know what your schema patterns are so that you can become a healthy adult with another healthy adult and have a far more fulfilling life. Number 3 on my list is vulnerable communication. This is also a skill that must be learned from the healthy adult part. So it's learning how to communicate from self-reflection first and explaining my interpretations, my feelings, what I'm making things mean, what the messages are that I'm getting from you first before you react to another person, to your partner. It's a form of honest, open, emotionally transparent dialogue that allows you to express your feelings, express your needs, fears, opinions, wants, passions without defensiveness. And it is definitely a skill. And even mature people really struggle with this. So when you understand vulnerable communication in a far better way, you really solidify your relationship and it makes the relationship very strong. This involves showing parts of yourself that feel tender, insecure, or imperfect, and essentially sharing kind of what's behind the curtain or what's underneath the surface so that you can allow yourself to be seen and known, right, to your partner. It also allows you to communicate more effectively and creates a space for a deeper understanding. So key characteristics to vulnerable communication include honesty, emotional honesty. So I'm very open and I'm honest about how I feel and what's going on with me, rather than making people masking those things with sarcasm or indifference or shutting down or pretending that I don't feel a certain way. Number 2 on this is another key component is risk taking, is being willing to be brave and share how you feel without knowing exactly what's going to happen. And that is courage. It's courageous to do that because you don't know if that's going to land well with your partner or not. And the more you learn how to be able to take a few risks here and there, the more you can understand how to communicate more effectively about what's going on with you and also get feedback from your partner to allow for you to have a deeper sense of connection. Number 3 on this is non-blaming. So when you are talking about your emotions, we're not trying to blame other people for how we feel. We're trying to take full responsibility for how we feel. So we're not pointing fingers. We're not blaming or accusing. We're talking about this from I statements rather than you statements. Number 4 on this is receptivity. We're trying to be open to hearing the other person's point of view, their perspective, to understand how to respond appropriately to their perspective without shutting down or getting highly defensive. Number 5 on this is intentionality. So we're communicating with intention. We're trying to communicate through the understanding that, I'm not trying to react to this. I'm trying to be very purposeful. I'm trying to be very thoughtful and mindful about what I think so that it comes out of my mouth the correct way. We're not trying to win an argument. We're just trying to communicate with our partner in a very diplomatic and kind of through a dialogue way. And then the last one on this for me is empathy, is really truly understanding another person's perspective and identifying with their emotions. Number 4 on my list is a commitment to growth. This is kind of baked into an understanding that being in love with somebody means that you grow with them over time. Because we're not the same people that we were back in our 30s or our 20s or our teens. Like if you look back on that, you understand you are a different person. So as we grow, our priorities change, our values change. As I've gotten older, I understand that, it's kind of funny because we joke around about, going out when we were in our 20s and staying out past 2 a.m., and here I am at the age of 50 and, I can't even do that. It'd take me a week to recover staying out past 2 a.m. So I change, my priorities change. I'm no longer interested in doing the things that I did when I was in my 20s. I'm more interested in different things. And so if you are the kind of person that's growing and changing, but your partner is still interested in doing the same stuff that they were doing back in their 20s, you're going to start to spread apart. You're going to differ in your values. So committing to growing with each other means that you have to be able to kind of align yourselves with one another over time. It also means that you're committed to grow as an individual, like personally grow as an individual. So, solving problems together is also a big part of that. It's you and me against the problem, not you against me. We're not trying to win anything here. Your partner is your partner. They are not your enemy to kind of conquer or beat. So the other part of this is understanding positive regard. When we are positive regard, we're thinking the best of our partners. We're trying to really understand that it's important for them to influence me. For my partner to influence me, she has my best interest in mind. I have her best interest in mind. And we look out for each other. We're not trying to control each other. We're trying to talk with each other. So when we're making mistakes, or we're not quite understanding how we're making people feel, or we're engaging in behavior that is kind of dysfunctional, we want our partners to be able to influence us. So we have to give them positive regard. And then finally on this section is willingness to look at yourself and have a deep respect for how you affect your partner. It's so important for you to know that you don't want to do anything to damage your relationship. And so you have to have some degree of self-discipline in order to do that. You can't just have it your way, and your partner just can't have it their way. You have to work together to understand what makes this relationship work for both of us. And when we are committed to growing together in that way, then we have a far deeper, healthier relationship. My final section on here, number 5, is our relationship hygiene. You got to keep it clean. Keep your relationship clean. So we want to try, this is preventing resentment and contempt in the relationship. And I kind of think about resentment and contempt as like rust on your car. We're trying to keep the car clean enough so that rust doesn't develop on the car, because rust has a way of eating its way through the body of your vehicle, and then you have big problems on your hands. So we don't want rust, resentment, and contempt to eat its way through our relationship. And the way that we go about doing that is that we are regularly processing our anger towards one another. It is normal to be angry with each other. It is 100% normal to be frustrated by little bitty things. The way you put the toilet paper on the toilet paper holder, or, how you put the dishes in the dishwasher. It's normal to feel that way. It's understanding that processing through that and talking through that in an open and honest way with understanding allows us to be able to put that down, that it's not that big of a deal. And I can put that away. I feel heard and I feel validated. It doesn't mean I have to change everything about me and walk on eggshells and my partner is nitpicking me. It means that if my partner is pushing down their anger, or if I'm pushing down my anger, then I'm building up resentment. I'm building up contempt inside the relationship. This also includes emotional responsiveness. This is our ability to respond appropriately to our partner through responsiveness rather than reactions and defensiveness and argumentativeness, or invalidation, like, oh my God, you're talking about this again, right? So knowing that we need to be able to appropriately respond to our partner and not react is essential for relationship hygiene. Another section of this is to co-regulate. This is the ability to emotionally help one another out when we're struggling. So we're tuning in to each other's struggles and our wants and our desires and our fears. So if I'm coming to my partner and sharing something with her about something that I'm struggling with, my expectation is that she's going to listen to me. She's going to validate me. She's going to just kind of help me out emotionally, even if it just means that she just allows me to bitch and gripe about something, right? Without trying to fix it, without trying to tell me what to do, without shutting me down, without saying, oh my God, you talk about this all the time. That is not emotional responsiveness. It's not co-regulation. It's not validation. It is the opposite of those things. And that builds your resentment. That builds up your contempt, right? So when we're validating each other's feelings without trying to fix things, we are simply trying to share our emotional experiences, and we need our partners to help us out with that. The next step of this is acknowledging the importance of one another. This is gratitude and appreciation. This is our ability to feel grateful for the person that we're with and that that person makes our lives better. It's so easy for us to just take each other for granted, especially because we tend to become blind to what we see every single day. So when you are, really noticing that, you have to make a point of noticing what you're grateful for about your partner regularly and express it. It doesn't do you any good, and it doesn't do your partner any good if you're just holding all of this inside. Say how you feel. I really appreciate how hard you work. I really appreciate how you are so tender and loving to the kids. I appreciate that you pay attention to me and you ask me questions about how I'm feeling about stuff, or that you are, you always buy my favorite, dessert, and you're so kind about that. Expressing that appreciation and expressing that gratitude makes us feel good, makes us feel worthy, makes us feel appreciated, makes us feel wanted. And so it's essential when you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy. That's self-esteem needs. And then finally is emotional expression. Showing demonstrably your emotions to your partner. So this is obviously intimacy. This is lovemaking. This is care, concern. This is our ability to tune in to how we feel emotionally and to be able to know that however I'm feeling emotionally, I might be affecting my partner with my behavior if I'm not careful. And it might be in a negative way. It can also be a very positive thing, how I feel emotionally, and I buy my partner a gift, or I give her a back rub, or I hold her hand, or I just put my arm around her, or we just go take a walk together and we talk about our lives. That's also emotional expression. So it's our ability to also recognize how we feel so that we are not in a state of reactivity. Because reactivity, again, slowly poisons your relationship over time. And if you're not careful with reactivity, it breaks the relationship apart, because that foundation is safety, and reactivity has a way of breaking that down. If you're interested in learning all 5 of these steps and how to create a relationship that lasts, go to the links below where you can just schedule a discovery call and we can talk about my signature class, Breaking Reactive Patterns, the Blueprint for Building a Safe and Healthy Relationship. And be sure to check out this next video on how fear sabotages our relationships. Thanks a lot.